Okay, you should be all set. All right, then let's talk about what we are going to do today. What I would like to do today is to quickly finish off where we left off yesterday, talking about chloroplasts. All right, just to make sure you all understand that what we discussed. And then we're going to begin talking about today the cell membrane, and we're going to talk about how things get into the cell. All right, how we can, we know that things have to get in and out of the cell, and how does that happen? Kevin?
What is the small thing, cell? Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's start off, let's go back to chloroplast first, and then we'll do all that stuff, okay? Chloroplast, real quick. Can somebody give me the job of the chloroplast? Real quick. Beth? You remember Alicia then?
Oh, it's job makes food.
Thank you. Makes food for what kind of things? Where do you find it? Where do you find it? Becky?
Plant cells, algae cells, and sea slugs.
Okay, well, remember the sea slugs is an exception, so don't keep that in mind. All right, it's really just the plant cells and the algae cells. All right, and what are the raw materials that chloroplasts need to make their food? To make the food for the cells? Sarah? Okay.
Wouldn't algae be a plant?
Algae are not the same as plants because of the way that they live. All right, algae basically are singular-celled organisms or single-celled plants, in other words. Whereas a plant, when we talk about plants, are multi-celled. Okay, and so that's really the only difference between them. But yes, for the most part, they're very similar. All right, but let's go back to the question: the raw materials needed for making food for chloroplasts. Andrea? Water, sunlight, carbon dioxide. One more thing you should have in your notes.
I didn't have it.
Didn't have this part?
No,
We left off here? Okay, then let's pick it up here then. Let's write down what she has up to this point.
all we have is where you find it and where its job is.
Okay, then let's pick it up right here where we left off then, which is the next thing is the raw materials. Raw materials. Thanks, Holly. Raw materials needed to make food. All right? And this again is the chloroplast. All right, and Andrea so far has come up with water, carbon dioxide, or CO2, that's the chemical formula for it, sunlight, and there's one more thing. It's part of the chloroplast. It's something you should have read about. We may or may not have mentioned it. Maybe think of the green color that plants have.
Oh.
Will? Chlorophyll. Okay, it's a chemical. All right, chlorophyll. All right, so those are the raw materials needed to make food. Okay, needed to make food. All right, water, carbon dioxide, sunlight, chlorophyll. What is the food that is made? What do plants make? What kind of things come out of the chloroplast? Duncan?
Sugar.
Sugar. And what else? What else comes out of it? Sarah?
Is it protein?
Well, protein, no, not really. Just remember, this is the chloroplast.
Oh.
Okay, protein's going to be made somewhere else. Well, what else do we get from plants?
Oh.
Becky?
Oxygen?
Oxygen. And there'll be some leftover water. Okay, there'll be some leftover water that'll be, that comes out of this whole thing. Okay, so this is what chloroplasts do. All right, the chloroplast takes water and carbon dioxide and using sunlight. What's sunlight going to provide for this process? What's the sunlight going to provide for this process? Alicia?
Energy.
Energy. Okay, this is going to be the energy. What about the chlorophyll? What do you think the chlorophyll is going to do? Katie?
Give it color?
Well, it does give the cell color, okay? It does give the green color in plants. But what does it do in this food making process? Anybody have any ideas or any guesses? So a quick hand, Becky. What were you going to say?
Well, in the movie we saw, wasn't it that it made it move around the thing there?
Well, the chloroplasts were moving, okay? But that wasn't what was making them move. But that's all right. It's still a good guess. Okay. How about if I tell you this? How about if I told you that the chlorophyll doesn't get used in this reaction at all? It doesn't change or get used up in the reaction. I see a couple things of recognition. Andrea? Now you're thinking of something else, but it's a good guess. At least you're thinking. Will?
Enzymes?
It's not doesn't make enzymes. It is an enzyme. Okay, this is an enzyme. Or enzymes are proteins in any case. And so chlorophyll doesn't actually do anything, or it doesn't become the sugar or the oxygen. The chlorophyll is nothing more than the place where the carbon dioxide and the water will come together to form sugar and oxygen. Beth?
I don't understand. So is the chloroplast like when the whole cell gets all this food?
Okay. What happens is this: we have a cell, okay, plant cell. Now the chloroplast is a structure, an organelle in there. All right. Now there's usually many of them, not just one. And yes, that is where that cell is going to get its food, okay? Because that's what the sugar is. Okay, the sugar acts as food. All right, that's where it's going to get its food to be burnt by mitochondria or whatever to give the cell energy to live. Now, see, animal cells don't do this. Animal cells have to get their food from this step. They have to get their food from the plants. All right, that's what makes the animal cell so much different than the plant cell. All right, and only plants and algae can make and use the chlorophyll. Alicia, you have a question?
Animal cells don't have chloroplasts?
Animal cells do not have chloroplasts. All right, the only exception to that is the sea slug, which can use a plant's chloroplast for a very short time. All right, but put it this way, animal cells cannot make chloroplasts. That's probably a better way to think of it. All right, so they can't make chloroplasts to have them to use.
But they get it from
We get it from plant cells, but we don't use chloroplasts. All right, we don't have this chloroplast in our cells that can make our own food. All right, animals aren't designed to do that. Animals are designed to use the food that's already being made by the plants. Okay, that's what makes what makes the big difference. Okay, is that clear now? Okay. All right. Does anybody happen to know the name of this process? There is a name for this big process, and I'm sure you've all seen it at least once. It's in your books, but you've probably heard of it before too. Beth, the only one that knows?
Well, is it?
All right, Beth, give me a guess. What is it?
No, it's not the protoplasmic.
Streaming? No, that's different. But at least that was a good guess. No, protoplasmic streaming is that movement again in the cell. Will?
Small cells like fusion, something like
Not yet. We're going to do those in a minute.
Oh,
Kevin? It's part of metabolism, but it's not. In other words, it works for metabolism, but it's not. That's not the name of it. Andrea? Again, that's cell division. You're all good terms, all good guesses. Is that your guess too, Jen? All right, let's see if we can figure out the word. Let me tell you this. Let me ask this. Can somebody tell me a word to describe the putting together of things? In other words, how can you describe, what's a name for that? Yes?
combining.
Okay, combining is one way. What's another one? Something that begins with S. Jen?
Well, is that photosynthesis?
Yes, this is all photosynthesis. I was looking for the word synthesis Okay, this is all photosynthesis. That's the name of this. Okay, photosynthesis is the name of this process. And it is a very, very important process. If this process did not occur, we would not exist. It's very simple. If the chloroplast did not exist in the plant cells and the algae cells to produce the sugars and the oxygen that we need as animals, we couldn't exist because we depend on these organisms, all right, the plants and the algae, to create our food for us. All right, then. Is that clear for everyone now? Does everyone feel comfortable with chloroplasts? Are there any questions about them? Hey, this is good. 'Cause with the two classes, I get confused at times where we left off. So, Jenna,
What do we depend on those things for?
we depend on it for our food and our oxygen. Okay, our food and our oxygen. Any other questions about the chloroplast? All right, then. Something else we discussed yesterday, and we want to review, or lately we've discussed, is the idea of the cell theory. In other words, the whole idea of how our organisms are built, and it falls under this idea called cell theory. And cell theory has basically three parts, three ideas. Can anybody list those for me? Anybody list those for me? You can look them up in your notes. It's not cheating this time. It's a review. Mike?
All cells come from pre-existing cells?
All cells come from pre-existing cells. You want to do all three, or should I call on other people? All right. How about Stacy?
All living things are made up of cells.
All living things are made up of cells. That's two. Who haven't we heard from? Jared.
Cells are the basic building block of all living things.
Okay. Not only are all living things made of cells, they are also the building blocks. Cells are the building blocks of all living things. All right, that cell theory, again, is very important. And as we were saying yesterday, some people may accept this, others may not. But at least in science class, at least for what we're going to discuss, this is the idea that we base our working with living things on. All right? Questions on cell theory? All right, the last thing we discussed yesterday, and it took us a long time to get it through, but the last thing we discussed yesterday dealt with the size of cells and the variety of sizes that we deal with cells. All right, and we said that most cells are what size? If you needed to come up with a term to describe the size of most cells, what would it be? Carrie?
Microscopic.
Microscopic, which means what, Carrie?
It's small, but you have to see it in a microscope.
Okay, that they're so small that you need some sort of magnifying device, a microscope, to be able to actually to see them. All right? But we said there are some extremes, all right? There are some very extreme ends to this. And that the very largest single cell that we could find is the group of cells called what? What group, Duncan? Eggs, and the largest of those is, of course, Duncan?
Ostrich.
The ostrich egg. All right, so that when an ostrich egg is the very first fertilized, when it first becomes fertilized, which means it gets both sets of information, that becomes one cell, one living cell. All right? Now, the smallest cells is where we were working yesterday. And we said that if we use a human egg cell as our basis, and a human egg cell is pretty big. You can see a human egg cell with a regular magnifying lens, not even a microscope. All right? And then we said, well, let's compare the red blood cells to a human egg cell. We said, how many red blood cells would it take to line up end to end to stretch the length of a human egg cell? Josh? 14. All right, so we know that the red blood cells are much smaller now than a human egg cell. Well, then if we take one red blood cell and we look at the smallest cells that we know about, all right, those cells are called, and I'm going to write it up on the board again so you can see it. Okay, R-I-C-K-E-T-T, I want to make sure it's S-I-A-S.
Those are the red blood cells?
Okay, no, this is the smallest cell. Okay, so if we compare these, okay, these are the smallest cells. If we compare these to one human red blood cell, how many of these would it take end to end to go the length of one human red blood cell? Brendan?
35.
35. Okay, so you can see they're incredibly small. Incredibly small. Beth?
Okay. What was I gonna say? But anyway, with the cell theory
Yes.
with Robert Hooke,
Okay.
was it 1665 or 35?
65. 1665. Okay, it's good to check. Becky?
Yeah. So, aren't the red blood cells called the
No, red blood cells
you
aren't.
just said the smallest cells were the red blood cells.
No, I said we're comparing the smallest cells, these right here, to a human red blood cell. Okay, the human red blood cells are called human red blood cells. Okay? Is that clear for you, though?
Well, yesterday
Yesterday it was all cramp on the end of the board. That's why I wanted to write the name up again and make sure you understood the comparison.
Mr. T,
Okay? Sarah?
you spelled rickettsia different.
Yes, I know. That's why I double-checked it and wrote it on the board. This is the correct spelling. All right? That's why I wanted to double-check and make sure you all have the correct spelling in your notes. All right, yesterday we tried to cover this right at the end of class, and we ended up running short on time, and I didn't want to, I wanted to make sure you did have the correct information. All right? So, questions on cell size. Questions on the size of cells. Kevin?
Well, it's not really a question, but are we going to have to know, like, how are they compared to the cells? Like, how many?
What I would know, that's a very good question. On a test, what I would know is basically what is the largest and what are the smallest. And the fact that most are microscopic. All right, that would basically cover all your aspects that you need to do. Okay? That?
Yeah, is this, doesn't have to do this, but the quiz. I know.
Yes. The other class, I announced to the other class that they would have a quiz tomorrow dealing with this information. All right, now, I realize it's short notice, but I would also like to have this quiz occur for your class tomorrow. Now, the reason being, it's not a large quiz. It's not going to count for a lot of points. I'll tell you that right now. Okay, so you can all relax on that respect. It's not going to be a 50-point quiz or something like that. It'll probably be about a 20-point quiz. All right, and it's going to deal with the cell parts. All right, the parts of the cell. So we will have covered all the parts of the cell basically before then. If not, if by the end of class I don't feel you're ready for it, I'll announce it and you won't have that quiz tomorrow, okay? Becky?
So is it going to count just like is any wake-up quiz as a homework?
If it was a wake-up quiz, it would be the size of a homework. This is different. It's not a wake-up quiz. It would be a
I
little
thought you
bit
said
more.
we weren't going to have quizzes, just wake-up quizzes.
No, we'll have regular quizzes too. Jenna?
Is it going to be on this stuff right here that you have on the board?
It would be on, chloroplast would be included in it, yes. Okay?
Okay.
Not photosynthesis and all the rest perhaps, but chloroplast would be included.
But what, like
These guys?
yeah.
No.
Okay.
What about the stuff we read in the book on our own?
That
the
would be all
packet.
included on it. So basically what I would want to see on the quiz is that you know all the parts that we discussed. So in other words, cell membrane, cell wall, you read about those, at least know what they are. The mitochondria, the vacuole, the lysosomes, okay, the ribosomes, the endoplasmic reticulum, all the parts that we did our presentations on. That's what the quiz would be. And just to know them, all right, and know what they basically do. That's all that would be on. Jenna?
Not going to be on diffusion and stuff like that?
No, not yet, because we haven't talked about it enough. Okay? All right, then. Let's then, if there's no other questions about that, I'm going to take this off. What I'd like to talk about today is I'd like to talk about the cell membrane very quickly, because we already had one group discuss the cell membrane with us. And then get into the idea of this process called diffusion and osmosis. All right. First off, let's start by simply mentioning cell membrane. All right. And we'll start by saying, where will you find, or what kind of cells will you find the cell membrane in? What kind of cells will you find the cell membrane in? Sarah?
Animal cells? I mean plant cells?
Okay.
Is it both?
It's both. All cells. Okay. All right. It's both. Right. You got it at the end. All cells have a cell membrane. Okay, all cells have a cell membrane. How about location? Where on the cell will we find the cell membrane? Your group did this. Katie?
Outside, not outside of the cell.
Okay, it is
Around
the.
it.
Okay, it surrounds the cell. Okay. And what about its function or job, should we say? What is its function or job? I guess I should let one of you guys do something from your group. Brendan.
To let the things the cell needs in and the things the cell don't need else.
Okay, so it's going to control what goes in and out of the cell. All right. Other things. Becky.
Yeah, I have a question. Doesn't it? I was studying last night. 'Cause
Yes.
Someone told me that we might have a quiz tomorrow. So, but doesn't something with pores have to do with cell membrane?
How this stuff gets in and out? Yeah, we're going to talk about that when we talk about osmosis and diffusion, all that in just a few minutes. Okay? But is there any other job that the cell membrane does or anything else we should add? Kevin?
Well, on a location in plant cells, wasn't the cell wall?
But the cell membrane still surrounds the cell. That's why it's best not to say it's the outermost part of the cell. All right? By just saying it surrounds the cell, when we talk about cell wall, we'll just stick that on the outside of it. Okay? But that's a good point. Okay, anything else about the cell membrane that we should know maybe about its job? All it does is control what goes in and out of the cell? Beth?
Well, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay. See, I was talking to someone in this class last night because I heard about that quiz too.
Yeah.
And I was studying the cell membrane, and I could not figure out the cell membrane. What's the difference between the cell membrane and the cell wall?
Okay. We'll talk about that in just a second because actually that's going to be an important comparison. All right? Let's first figure out there is another job that the cell membrane does. Actually, there are two more things it does. Alicia?
Help protect the cell?
Okay, obviously, protection. Okay? Protection. It's obviously another job of it. What else is it going to do? Come on, think about it. It's going to surround the cell. So what's that also going to do? Jenny?
It sort of like holds it all in there.
Right, so it's going to, if it's holding it all together, it's going to give it
Support.
that's support.
It's shape.
Thank you. All right, it gives it shape. Gives the cell shape, okay? But if it's going to give the cell shape, and what else does it what should it be then? All right? Remember, think about your cells, all right? All your cells have cell membranes around them. Beth?
Well, I remember in the book, when you press down on your skin, it's flexible, so it pops back up.
So it has to be flexible, okay? We'll write that down. That's an important fact. Cell membrane, all right, is flexible. All right, that allows it to have some give and some movement. Kevin?
Bounds the cell together.
Okay, well, gives the cell shape, and we can still add some space here, all right, and holds it together. Okay, you can add that to gives the cell shape and holds it together. Okay, that's what Jenny was saying too. All right, so the cell membrane does more than just control what goes in and out. It protects the cell, all right? It's the outermost defense. All right, it gives the cell its shape and holds it together, and it also has to be flexible while doing all this. It has to be able to have some give and take. Alicia?
Hold the whole cell together?
It holds the entire cell together, right. If the cell membrane breaks, all the material in the cell, which we call what? Somebody's hand?
Oh.
All that material in the cell? Justin?
Protoplasm.
That protoplasm, if the cell membrane breaks, that protoplasm can leak out. All right, and the cell is in jeopardy of dying. Okay, now let's just quickly to answer Beth's previous question, dealing with the cell wall and the cell membrane, all right? The differences, and I don't want to go through and list all the things about cell wall really right now because I really want to talk about the cell membrane some more. But the difference is this: cell walls are only found in plants and bacteria. Okay, so they're not found in all different kinds of cells. And the cell wall is not part of the living cell.
Do I start this?
All right? You can write it down if you're curious, okay? If you want to write it down, because it is a good fact to know. But it is something, it's in the book, and it's something when we review. Remember I told you, after we go through diffusion and osmosis, we will sit down and review all the parts of the cell again. When we do that review with the cell wall, this will come up again. But if you want to write it down now, feel free to do it, and I'll repeat. All right? The difference between cell wall and cell membrane is the cell wall is only in plant cells and bacteria. So that's one difference. All right? Cell wall is only in plant cells and bacteria. And the cell wall is not part of the living cell. Okay, the cell wall is non-living. It's not part of the living cell. Does that mean the cell membrane is part of the living cell? Yes. All right. The cell membrane is part of the living cell, so it really is part of the protoplasm.
So, in the cell, in an animal,
Yes.
the outermost layer would be the cell membrane instead of the cell wall.
Right. And in plants, you have the cell membrane, and then the cell wall covers that. Okay. Sarah?
What cells is the cell wall found in?
Plant cells and bacteria cells. All right. Dan, is there a problem? Okay. Now, what I was going to say is this. We talk about this idea right here, where it says that the job of the cell membrane is to control what goes in and out of the cell. All right? Well, how does it do that? How can this membrane have any sort of ability to judge what goes in and out of it? Well, first off, if you think of the cell membrane, most of the time you're going to think of some sort of, solid material, like a plastic bag, all right? This is, when we think of cell membranes, you can almost think of it as a plastic bag where, it's going to surround the cell and it's going to, protect it. But, how can material get through this? Well, it can get through it because of openings that are going to be found in the cell membrane. And these openings have a name. Does anybody know what the name of the openings is? Will.
Pores.
Okay, they're pores. Okay, so we can write this down still under cell membrane. All right? Cell membrane. Okay, has pores. All right, you can just put holes. All right, has pores. But these pores are different than, for example, the pores you'll see in the cell wall. The cell wall has pores also because material has to get through the cell wall to get to the cell membrane to get into plant cells. The difference is the cell membrane has pores. We're not done yet. Cell membrane has pores which can be opened and closed. In other words, the cell membrane has some ability to control which things get to go in and out. All right, it's got these holes that can be opened or closed to move material in or out. Okay, Becky.
Last night when I was reading, they said, or in my notes in the book, it said that it controls the bacteria that goes in and out, the bad, they don't let the bad bacteria in, but then how do we get diseases?
Okay,
They don't let the
it's a good question. All right, the cell membrane, like you just said, it can judge what should go in and out. And bacteria, for example, which we find as being bad for ourselves, causes us to get disease and to get sick. How can we get sick if the cell membrane is supposed to keep them out? Well, unfortunately, the cell membrane is not infallible. In other words, it's not perfect. And there are times when these bacteria and these bad things for our cells can get in. And that's where we get the problems, where we get disease. All right, so there are those problems that can arise. And actually, there are some bacteria and there are some diseases, for example, a virus. All right, when we look at a virus doesn't even bother going through a pore in the cell membrane. A virus will make its own hole. It'll actually attach to the cell membrane and drill its own hole and then send all its material into the cell. And some bacteria can do that also. They can actually attack and drill and burrow their way right through the cell membrane. So it's good, and it has some ability to control what goes in and out, but it's not totally perfect. All right, and that's why we still get sick. All right, it's a good question. All right. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to leave a little bit the idea of cell membranes, and we're going to talk about two processes or two ways materials get into a cell, get in and out of a cell. All right? And so, has everybody got this information so I can erase this? Anybody doesn't? Okay. So, we're going to talk about two processes that are going to allow material to get in and out of the cell. One of them, yes, Beth? Oh, so go ahead. No, go ahead.
Diffusion and osmosis.
All right, well, thank you. All right. I wasn't going to ask that, but since you said it, that's fine. Okay, the two processes that we're going to talk about are going to be diffusion and osmosis. All right? And osmosis. All right. And diffusion and osmosis are natural ways of moving material. Let's start by saying that right. Let's write that right from the start. All right. Both are naturally occurring ways of moving material. All right? And what that means is very simple. The cell membrane does not have to do any work when it's using osmosis and diffusion. It doesn't have to do any sort of work to have this process occur. It occurs naturally. All right? It's one of these facts of nature that can happen. Let's do a little demonstration. All right? I have here a beaker of water. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to illuminate it from the bottom so you can see it better. All right? That's why it's just facing the wall. And over here, now, remember we talked about before that in class when we did the microscopes and stuff, we never use any sort of, material like blood. All right, well, this is an exception in this case. This has been sterilized. I got a little bottle of blood here. All right. Of course it's blood. Come on, ketchup doesn't flow like that. But in any case, it's been sterilized and stuff, so we don't have to worry about it. But what would happen? What would happen to this jar of water if I was to add a drop of this blood to it? What would happen? What would float? Why? Blood doesn't float.
It would sink to mix in.
Well, wait. I'm getting a lot of different answers. Let me see some hands, and we'll come up with a couple different ideas here. Okay, I got a lot of ideas tossing around, but let's get some hands. All right, well, let's start with Sarah's idea. What do you think is going to happen? What's going to turn red?
Water.
What do you mean? You mean as soon as I drop this in there, poof, it's all going to be red?
No, it's just it'll mix in. Oh, turn pink.
All right, so you think it's going to just kind of mix in slowly? All right. All right, John, what's your idea?
It's real blood. It'll hit and it'll sink. It just like swim the root. Gets it out. It's
All
real
right.
blood.
If it's real blood, okay. All right, so John's saying that if it's blood, it's just going to go in there. It's going to drop to the bottom? It's going to float down to the bottom, but stay as a drop.
Well, it could like be a little bit, but it's gonna end up going going down.
Okay, so I'm gonna go down. All right, Stacy?
You get like two like little bubbles and then it will start floating down to the bottom.
Okay, so you think it's gonna form little tiny, smaller bubbles and float down, all right? Katie, no? Okay, Will?
What happens when you pour milk in it? It sort of makes a sheet, or I don't know what you call it. I don't know. It sort of has waves in it, and it is a bubble. I don't know how to say it.
Okay, something whatever Will says.
Like when you pour milk in water.
Yeah.
That's what it would do. You know,
Okay, Will says it's gonna look like milk and water. All right, it's gonna act like milk and water. Okay. All right. Well, let's see if we can find out. All right, so if I drop it in, well, wait, Becky, you had one. All right,
I
go
was gonna
ahead.
say it was either gonna dissolve or act like oil.
All right, you think it could act like oil and just kind of float on the surface?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
all right, here we go. Let's see what we got here. Oh, wait, Justin, you had one. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
it'll go in the water and then it'll spread out so it'll turn like a light.
Okay, so you think it's gonna go in the water and then kind of spread out, form a light thing. All right, here we go. All right, I'm gonna be honest with you. It's not blood. All right, it's not blood. All right, I'll be honest with you. So I'll. Does anybody want to change your answer then? No. 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 All right. Here we go. Huh? Huh? It's food coloring water. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Oh, Andrew, you had something though. What was it? It won't turn the water pink. It won't.
It'll just dilute the nothing,
All right.
basically.
All right. You guys. All right. Here we go.
It's gonna float on top of its food coloring.
People keep interrupting. You know what am I going to do? All right. Here we go. Everyone's ready.
Mr. Key, just put it in.
All right. Okay, can everyone see? Can you see? All right. Here we go. All right. Actually, maybe the lights. Is the light too bright? All right. Now we can see a little bit. What's happening? Well, let's have somebody. Let me do this. Let me add a couple more drops.
That's exactly what
Now.
milk does.
Okay. Somebody please describe what they see happening here. Somebody please explain what they see happening. Kevin?
It's expanding and it's slowly floating to the bottom.
Okay. Is it only floating to the bottom?
What?
Is it only floating to the bottom?
Sides, too.
To the side, it's expanding out to the corner.
Okay. All right. Maybe see if we can. Let's hear Becky's
Is
description.
it like the material with the chemicals or whatever is in there is spreading apart? Because the water?
Okay. So you think it's spreading apart and doing what?
Going to the bottom. I think.
Okay. What would happen here? I'll even add a little bit more so you can get a better chance to see it a little bit more. All right. What do you think would happen here if I left that for 5-10 minutes? What? I want to see hands. Come on, people. We can't have everybody on at once. What are we going to find? Rachel.
It would disappear.
What's going to disappear? It's going to be clear again?
Well, sort of. It'll be sort of a mixed color.
It would be sort of a mixed color. So you're saying what's going to happen to all this red that's in here?
It's just going to turn sort of pinker.
So what happens to the red? Where'd the red color go?
Still
Oh.
there.
Where'd the red color go? Andrea?
The water dissolves.
The water's not dissolving anything. Not dissolving anything. Where's the red color going to go? Brendan?
I think it'll float to the top.
Well, it's not. Nothing's floating. We don't see anything floating. Becky? And no, everything would evaporate. Katie?
It'll like go everywhere.
Everywhere. Okay, that's what's happening here. All right? What's happening is this. This, ladies and gentlemen, is diffusion. All right? This is what's happening. All right? Diffusion is a natural process. Did you see any cell membrane in here doing any work? All right, we didn't have any cell membrane doing any work in here. We didn't have any sort of, special machine in here doing anything. But what is happening here is diffusion. All right? Now, how many people here have ever made Kool-Aid before? Okay, you all made Kool-Aid. Now, Kool-Aid, if you buy those little packages, right, if I remember my directions correctly, you take the little packet, not the one with sugar, you take the packet, you dump it in, and you add a cup of sugar, and it says to add 2 quarts of water, right? What happens if you only add 1 quart of water? What happens? Your hands, come on, hands. What happens if you only add 1 quart of water? Kevin.
Well, it's not going to be as, it's going to be darker than it would.
The color would be darker. What else? What else? Stacy?
It'd be like, it would be like sweeter because of the sugar.
Okay, there'd be more sugar, so it'd be sweeter. Okay, does anybody know a word to describe this? There's a word that would describe what we would make, how it would be different from a regular Kool-Aid mix. Will?
Well, it would be the opposite of diluted.
Okay, what is the opposite of diluted?
Diluted.
No? What's the opposite of diluted? No, not osmosis. Nobody knows the opposite of diluted? No. All right, Jenny? Nah, not close. Thickening is a good word for it. Let me ask this. Anybody here ever make frozen orange juice?
Crystalline.
You've never, who here has made frozen orange juice? Raise your hand.
Solid.
Frozen orange juice. Raise your hand. Okay. When you read the label of frozen orange juice, what is it called? How do they describe it? Nate? Concentrated. So if we made Kool-Aid with only half the water, it would be concentrated, right? It would have more flavor, more sugar than it was supposed to. All right? Take a look at our beaker of water here. All right? What Rachel and a lot of people have already said is starting to come true. All right? We no longer see, all right, is the water as dark or as concentrated a color as the dye? No. All right? So what, can anybody tell me what's happening in diffusion? Think about it. Everyone think about it for a minute and try and figure out a definition. Use the word concentrated too. All right, think about what's happening here. Here's what we started with. This is a concentrated solution, right? Because this is a dark color. This is what we ended up with. All right, it's a much lighter color. All right, Kevin, what'd you come up with?
Diffusion, the molecules move from a place of greater concentration to lesser concentration.
You read that somewhere. He's got a good memory, though. He's got a real good memory. Let's write that down. Diffusion, all right, is when material moves from an area of high concentration to low concentration. All right? That's diffusion. Katie.
What would happen if you put that whole thing in?
Okay, let's see what would happen if we add a little bit more. Okay, is it better with the lighter now?
Yes.
Okay, see, for me it's not because I get a glare. But all right, if I add some more. All right, now as I add that in there, I can't see that, it would be too much better, but we'll leave it for now. As I add that in there, where is the high concentration of color? Andrea? Okay, it's these streams of the dark color. That's the high concentration. Where are the low concentrations of color? Sarah?
Well, where it's not so dark.
Where it's not so dark. So you can actually see the process of diffusion happening right now, right in front of you, because this color, right, which is concentrated in the dark areas, is diffusing. It's moving from the areas where it's high to the areas where it's low. It's a natural process. That's the definition of diffusion. All right. Now, how many people had turkey dinner for Thanksgiving?
Oh.
All right. Now, let me ask this. How many people were awake and saw their mother put the turkey in the oven? All right. Most of you did. Those of you that did not, were not awake and saw your mother put the turkey in the oven, how did you know you were having turkey for dinner? I mean, it doesn't matter though. Maybe your mother got a free ham or something. How did you know, even though you didn't see her put the turkey in the oven, how did you know you were still having turkey for dinner? Dan?
Said the night before.
Yeah, but maybe she changed her mind. Got up in the morning and said, we'll have spam for Thursday, Thanksgiving. How did you know? How could you still know? How could you still be sure that you were having turkey for dinner? Josh? You can smell. Well, what's that mean? What are you smelling? What do you smell? When you smell that turkey cooking, what are you smelling? Sarah?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, Rachel, what are we smelling? Not well. What's in the fumes?
Turkey smell.
Not turkey smell. What's in the fumes? I hear somebody over here saying it.
Practically
No.
turkey smell.
Not the turkey smell. What's in the fumes? You're smelling turkey. When you smell anything, it's a real amazing thing that a lot of times we don't realize. When you smell something, you are literally smelling or experiencing molecules, parts of that material. So when you smelt the turkey, what's happening in that oven is where's the high concentration of turkey molecules or turkey material? In the oven. Where's the low concentration? Everywhere else. So what's happening is little tiny molecules of that turkey are breaking away and filling up or trying to fill up the air around you. And your nose will pick it up. That's diffusion. It's the same thing. It's the same process. So diffusion does not only occur in liquids, diffusion can occur in solids, and it also can happen in gases too. All right? We all produce natural gas, right? You've all had it happen at one time or another. You all know when somebody else has produced natural gas, right? But unless you're the person sitting next to the person that produced natural gas, it's not that bad, is it? Right? If, for example, Jarrett produced natural gas right now, Brendan, I'm sure, would be quite uncomfortable. However, Alicia's not going to find it that bad. Why? Why, Alicia?
Because there's less concentration.
That's right. By the time it diffuses all the way over to where you are, it's not going to be as strong. Okay? Becky.
Okay.
Shh, come on, people. Come on. Becky.
Well, like when you have like iced tea or something, and you just put one of those little scoops in, and then put a little water in it to mix it up.
Yes.
Well, how come it sinks to the bottom if it's supposed to happen naturally?
Okay. It's different. When you're mixing a solid with a liquid, it's a different process that has to occur too. The solid has to dissolve in the liquid first, and that's why you get that different. That's why it takes time.
Then how come it's different when you put it in hot water than it is when you put it in cold water?
Because hot water can dissolve things faster. All right, that's the differences. See, that's why I chose a liquid and a liquid. All right, because these two things are actually equal to begin with. That's why diffusion happens nice and evenly. All right, but if I took a solid, let's say I took if I took one of those Easter egg dyes, you know, those little pills you get from Paz, and you dump that in, that would be different. All right, because that would take longer. The diffusion would be different. All right, so that's why I chose this. Jenny.
But then how come when you have a stuffy nose you can't smell the stuff?
Because what's blocking the things that register what you're smelling, your receptors, okay, are in the back of your nose. And so if you have a stuffy nose, if you're congested, you're blocking them so nothing can get back to there. All right, in order to smell something, here's something that you may never realize. A lot of the food that you eat does not taste as bad as you think. A lot of the food that you have problems eating doesn't taste bad, it smells bad. All right, and here's an experiment you can try. Some of you may have done this. Take a piece of onion and a piece of apple. All right, take and close your nose. All right, pinch off your nose so you can't smell, and then close your eyes and have somebody give you the apple and have somebody give you the piece of onion. You won't be able to tell them apart. No, you won't. Katie, I'm not talking about peeling the onion. I'm talking about eating it. All right, if you close your eyes and pinch your nose and have somebody give you the apple and have somebody give you the onion separately, you will not be able to tell them apart, because if they're small pieces, so they're the same size, you won't be able to tell them apart, because the real big difference when you take and you eat an apple and you eat an onion is the smell. And the smell helps you register what it tastes like.
I do that when my mom cooks something I don't like.
That's exactly it. All right, Beth.
I do that with spinach ones.
Yes.
But I can still taste it.
Now, see, some foods, okay, now there's a difference, okay? Now, some foods, what you're going to experience is you have different taste receptors, basically bitter, salt, sweet, and sour. All right, and the food, the chemicals in the food have triggers that will set those off. And so sometimes you can hold your nose, it's not going to help. It's still going to taste bad. All right, but I'm saying in certain foods, an onion and apple happens to be one that works really neat. You can't really tell the difference because they don't set off any of those receptors any differently. All right, what I want to be able to show you and talk to you about now is this other process. This other process is called osmosis. All right, osmosis is the same thing as diffusion. It's real easy. Osmosis is the same thing as diffusion with one exception. Osmosis only works with one thing, and you need one other thing. Osmosis. Let's put the definition over on this side.
Wait, doesn't diffusion work with?
Diffusion works with everything, but osmosis is different. I'm going to show you. Osmosis, first off, osmosis is the movement, not of all things, all right? Diffusion moves everything. All materials diffuse, basically. Almost all materials diffuse. But osmosis is the movement of only one material, and that material is water. All right? And osmosis doesn't work in the room. We don't say if we drop some water on the thing, it osmosifies, all right? It evaporates. That's different. It diffuses in the room. Osmosis is the movement of water across a cell membrane. And then the rest of the definition is the same. From high concentration, abbreviation for concentration is CONC period. High concentration to low concentration. All right, so that's the difference. That's the only difference. Now, I'd like to be able to show you a neat example of osmosis. To do that, I need a cell membrane. Anybody want to volunteer one? Okay. Well, first off, are we going to be able to see any of your cells?
No.
Okay, are we going to be able to play with any of your membranes? No. So, how about if I used one of the larger cells that's available to us, which would be what? Beth? An egg. Well, how can I get at the cell membrane? There's got a problem with it. What's around the egg? No, it's not a cell wall. There's something special around an egg. What is it?
Shell?
It's a shell. All right? So what if I could take the shell off and leave the membrane intact? Does anybody know how you could do that?
Yes.
How?
I did it last night.
What?
I was helping my mother make chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah?
And I was supposed to crack the egg, and I didn't, and you just peel it off. And it
Okay, if
comes
you
off.
peel it though, you're gonna break it. How about Brendan?
We had to do it in grade. We took a straw and blew the egg out the other side.
Yeah, but see, I want the membrane. I want the membrane. Oh, Andrea? No, that's cheating too.
Don't you soak it in vinegar or something?
Okay, the shell of an egg is made out of something called calcium carbonate, which is something that's a base, something that's affected by acids. Vinegar is an acid. Sit down. So if you take and you soak an egg in vinegar for a long time, all right, this is just water now. If you take and you soak an egg in vinegar for a long time, what happens is all the shell dissolves and the membrane is left.
Is that
This is a raw egg. Okay, this is not cooked egg. This is a raw egg. It bounces.
How
Okay, it would break if you dropped it. All right, or if you poke at it, it will break. All right. So you can keep this for as long as you want. You could cook it if you want. Just
how long have you been doing that? Yeah.
oh, this is not vinegar. This is water now. Vinegar, you have to keep it in about 2 days. Okay.
I'm gonna try that.
Now you can try it at home.
Can you eat that?
Yeah, you can eat this egg. Now it may have a vinegary taste to it because sometimes the vinegar will diffuse into the egg. All right, but
That's like the shell.
now listen up. I'm going to trust you guys. I'm going to be very trusting to you, and I'm going to allow this to be passed around very quickly. We only have a couple minutes. All right? Now, while they're doing that, let me show you something. Now, here's my question to you. What would happen? All right? First off, what's the main ingredient inside that egg? What's the main chemical inside that egg? No, what's the main chemical inside the egg?
Protoplasm?
No, what's the main chemical protoplasm?
Cytoplasm.
What's the main chemical? Jenny? No, that's all right.
DNA.
Oh, come on, something more simple than that. What's most of your cells made out of? Where? I heard someone say it. Water. Now, let me ask you. Listen up, please. What would happen if I put that egg, or what should happen if I put that egg in pure water? Where would there be a higher concentration of water? Inside the egg or outside the egg? I want to see hands. Ladies, you got to listen too. Come on. This is important. If I put the egg in pure water, has a little bit of stuff in it. If I put an egg in pure water, where would there be a higher concentration? In the water and the egg? Justin? Okay. Anybody? Who agrees with that? All right. Then obviously it has to be outside the egg, right? Because it's pure water. Inside the egg, there's all sorts of other stuff. So if I put an egg in pure water, what should happen to it?
Expand.
It should get bigger. So if I put an egg in pure water, okay, you can see that this egg, compared to that egg, has gotten swelled up. It's gotten bigger. Because water is being pulled, because of osmosis, into the egg. What if I put it in salt water? Where's the higher concentration of water? Inside the egg. So where's the water going to go? No. Where's the water going to go, Josh?
Ouch.
It's going to squeeze in and the water's going to go outside and the egg would get smaller. Okay, this egg, if you see it compared to the other ones, gets smaller. Now, hang on a second. Big one goes in pure water. The other one goes in salt water, and you'll see the difference. Now, class is almost over. Let me just finish. All right, what we did today is we were able to... No, don't pack up. What we did today is we were able to get through and talk about chloroplasts and photosynthesis. We were able to go through and begin our discussion of diffusion and osmosis. All right, now, if you want to try this thing with the eggs, please just be careful with them. Now, please, let me get my egg back before you leave, okay? Go ahead. No quiz tomorrow.